What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful day today. Very calm. Just beautiful. It gives you a feeling of well-being. That's all I'm going to say. So, have Noxzema here, brand new. Look at that. I've been a fan of this stuff since I was about that big. Just refreshing. And the smell, I don't know if they still do the shaving cream part, but the smell is the smell I would smell when I was a kid, and my father would be shaving, and I'd watch, and he would use Noxzema. He had the white Noxzema bottle, it said medicated underneath, and then he would put a bunch of it in his hand, and then he would, lather up, and then he would use Gillette. In the old days, it was another brand. It was a straight edge, that blade that you open up the underneath. The handle has a F flat. So he would open it up. It would open up like that, and then he'd put a fresh blade inside. Had that design on the blade. And then he would shave with that. Get a couple of nicks. Then he'd take a little toilet paper and it would, stay there for a minute or so until the clotting process took over. But Noxzema shaving cream was what we used, what we had in the house, my father used. And then I don't know what happened. I don't know, it vanished, Noxzema. I don't see Noxzema shaving cream. If I see it, I'll buy it, but it's not in stores anymore. Maybe if I go online, I'll find it. So, but that smell is the same smell that is in this. So I remember summertime, you'd be running all day and sweaty, and maybe you're at the beach or whatever, and then you'd get home and had one of these. Lather up and then rinse off, or go in the shower and just get the whole thing off. But I've always enjoyed Noxzema. Very refreshing, and I think that's the reason, because it's refreshing. So one day I was visiting my grandparents. My grandfather was good company, and I hear noise in the... So anyway, I was visiting with my father. That's his father. So we went up the stairs and we opened up the door, and the very first thing I noticed was a big hit of Noxzema. I was like, wow, what'd they do? They painted the place with Noxzema? So my father, when he would get into a place or go into a place that had a unique smell, it could be rotting food, it could be whatever, he would do the sniffing like a bloodhound, and it was very obvious. It was like very loud too. So we get in there, he's doing the sniffing thing, he's trying to figure out, and then he's like, what is that? What is that? He goes, it smells like... So my grandfather goes, that, and he points to the top of the refrigerator, and he had a big thing of Noxzema. And he goes, I just discovered this, he goes. And he goes up there, he opens it up, he pulls a ton out, and he puts it in, he starts, rubbing it into his hands until it vanished, like magic. And he goes, this is the best hand cream I've ever used. He goes, it keeps my hands nice and soft. And I said, you're supposed to rinse that off. That's like a soap. It's not like a cream you leave in there. He goes, oh, he goes, really? I go, yeah, you gotta read the directions. It says right here, it's a classic cleaner, but you rinse it off. I don't know if it says leave it on forever. Yeah, you take it off. So he would leave it on. He had layer after layer after layer. His hands were all, Noxzema smelling, but the whole house smelled like that. And my father, with the sniffing, wanted to know what that was. And I knew immediately what it was, because and my father should have known too, because his shaving cream smells like that. Maybe he thought my grandfather shaved. So I would say to my father, I go, you don't use Norelco? He goes, I don't like the electric stuff. It dries out my skin. And myself also, I've used an electric shaver a couple of times in my life, and it doesn't give you that clean, refreshing feeling that you get when you shave with soap and a blade. Just more refreshing. You rinse off, you get that nice cool sensation. Then you put on some aftershave or some kind of cream, you know, refreshing cream. These days I'm a big fan of Truffet and Hill. I love Truffet and Hill products. So, you know, but I still, once in a while, I remember when Edge came out, Edge shaving cream. They had a guy who would shave, and then they had a credit card, and they would show the edge side nice and smooth. The other side was still noisy with the credit card. And I'm a fan of Edge. I love it. You know, it comes out as a gel, and then you do one of these things and it turns into a foam. So yeah, that's the thing. And this is a great cleaner, Noxzema, very refreshing. You put this on, put on with you could use your hands, you could use a towel, a face towel, rub it in there, and then you could do one of these, like the commercials. They'd fill their hands up and then you'd see the water dripping off in slow motion. Or just jump in the shower, make sure you get everything. And in the old days, I remember the one blade. You'd shave with that one blade. Now, well, then they went to two. You had the two. It was like a breakthrough. Gillette Track 2. Schick had 2. And then they went to 3. Now they got 5. And maybe there's more. You buy it, got the 5 going. And then they had a commercial where they would show the cartoon hair. It would be the first blade grabs it, and the first blade would pull the hair out a little bit, and then the next one would come and cut it. So it was always underneath the skin. I don't think that happens in real life. It pulls it out. I think it just cuts it, and then the other one cuts even more. The only thing I will say that the 5 is not as good as the 2 is right this area here, right underneath your nose. The Track 2 would get in there and cut everything out. The 5 is hard to fit in there. You get a lot of material. So anyway, I highly recommend Noxzema. I can't say enough about this. I love this product. Look at that. And Joe Bonomo, mentioned him. So I've said this before other times, but I was a big student of Charles Atlas. I ordered the course when I was a little kid, 1981. Ordered it, and it was expensive. I didn't have the money, to buy this thing. So I ignored it. I said, all right, I'll whatever. But they were persistent, and every month or so they would send me another offer. It went from 100 to 79 to like 59, 39, and I kept saying that's too much money. And one day I got a letter, as if Charles Atlas had sent it. I mean, he was not alive at that point, but so I opened it up and it said final offer $10. Get the entire Charles Atlas course, $10. And I had $10. So I went to my neighbor, this old guy. He was kind of like Gus the Fireman from Leave It to Beaver. I would go over there and would talk to him when I was a kid. And I went over there and I said, hey, I want to buy something. I give you $10. You give me a check for $10. And he said, yeah, okay. I gave him the 10. He wrote me the check out to Charles Atlas Incorporated. I put it in an envelope and I mailed it. And about a month went by. I would check the mail every day. I went down there. We had a good mailman in those days. His name was Charlie. Every day, 11 o'clock, the mail came. Every day. Then he retired, and then, the mail got screwed up. It would come one day at 11. Next day, it was there at 3, sometimes at 5. You never knew. But with him, every day, it was like clockwork. So I went down, and I saw a big, fat manila envelope on the floor inside the house. They fit it through the slot. It had my name on it, and it said Charles Atlas. And I was excited. I loved getting mail. So I grabbed it. I went in my room secretly, opened it up, no fanfare, and I opened it up, and it had the entire course. And I went up to my attic. My attic was my secret getaway. I went up there, and I started reading it. I went through the whole thing, saw all the pictures, and I started doing it. dynamic tension, you know, all that stuff, push-ups, sit-ups, and I did that for a long time. So a long time went by, and then I was in a bookstore. This was my favorite bookstore. It was down the Cape. I went in there, and that day, you know, I enjoy, to this day, I enjoy the books. And so I went in there, and they had, the area that I was in, down on the floor, they had boxes with books that were, like, they were trying to get rid of them. Guess they weren't selling, and they were all like $1. So I started looking at them, and the book that caught my eye was Joe Bonamo. Joe Bonamo. So I said, what is this? This is, it had weight training on it, you know, Joe Bonamo and the weight training. And I go, I'm ready to move up the ladder now. I did the dynamic tension thing. Now I'll do the weight thing. And this was very, you know, it was very good. It had pictures of the guys, and the guys looked like they were in shape. So to me, that was evidence that this stuff worked. So I bought the book, took it back, and every day I'd read the book, every day. So I finally got to my house, and I bought some weights, and I started doing the Joe Bonamo stuff. To this day, I'm a big fan of Joe Bonamo. Turkish background. I think he was Jewish background. Parents were Jewish, born in Turkey, came to the U.S. in the late 1800s. He was born in New York, like 1895, I don't know, around those years. And then they had a little business going on Coney Island, selling Turkish taffy. Bonamo Turkish taffy. So I got that book and I used it, and, you know, big fan of Joe Bonamo. He was a stuntman in Hollywood. But yeah, both those guys. Charles Atlas was a little bit younger than Joe Bonamo. Yeah, I liked both of them. They were both part of my childhood. And Rocky Marciano also used the Charles Atlas course. With Charles Atlas, there's no weights involved in that, you know, which is, you know, good if you go somewhere and you want to do a little workout. It's all dynamic tension. So you can do his workout anywhere. You know, and then they had little gimmick stuff like tearing a telephone book and stuff like that. That's all, you know, they had these separate things you can buy that you can learn how to tear a telephone book. Bionic Woman did that one time on one episode. The kids were kind of being a pain, and she goes, I've been told that this class is difficult. So as she's talking, she's got the telephone book. She told one of the students, can you give me that telephone book back there? Nobody has a telephone book anymore. They don't make them. So the kid brought the book to her, and as she's talking, she's slowly ripping the telephone book, and everybody's like, they're all like, oh man, what's going on with her? And then I remember she would write on the blackboard really fast, but she would turn it around so they couldn't see it. And that never made sense to me, how she was able to write that fast, because your brain is still, you know, human. It's not bionic. They didn't put, you know, artificial intelligence chips in there and made you super fast in your thinking. But she was like, and the kids would say she's going to do that strange or that crazy writing, whatever. But yeah, anyway, I digress. So yeah, I was a big fan of those two guys, Joe Bonamo and Charles Atlas, Angelo Siciliano. And I mention that because now I have the original book that I got in 1981 that was published, that Joe Bonamo had put out. So I don't have it yet. It's being mailed to me, and I will have it. Anyway, that's it. I will mention this book here. I think I've mentioned it before, but I will mention it. This is such a good book. If you can memorize 3 or 4 of these, I mean, there's, how many are they saying here? 200? That's a lot. You're like a knot expert. Now I know how to do it. Look, come here, I'll tie it for you. But if you can memorize like 4 or 5, whatever, knots, then you're all set. Especially the rigger's knot, you know, the 18-wheeler guys that tie things down. That's, to me, is the most impressive one. You know, you want to tie stuff on top of your vehicle. And you want to know how to do that. My father was an expert in that knot. He always used that knot. As a kid, I would tie things down. You know, when I got my motor car, I wanted to go somewhere, I would tie stuff down, and my knots were permanent. You had to use a knife to get through, but my father used a rigger's knot. And that one was when you would tie it, and then you would pull it, and it would tighten. And then wherever you got to, wherever the destination was, you would just pull it, and it would loosen, and you know, you'd have your rope again. So I know how to do that now, but you know, you do the loop, and then you pass it through, and then you tighten it down, and you secure it. That to me is very useful. But there's other ones too. If you got two ropes, you need to connect them. You need to do a knot that connects them so that, you know, under tension they don't split up. Suppose you want to cross somewhere in the Grand Canyon, and you know, like, you don't want to fall down, but the rope's separating, so you have to get a good knot, good grip. They show you how to do that in this book. Like in that movie Cliffhanger, where Sylvester Stallone is holding on to that woman, and everything starts to come apart, and that metal bracket breaks, and then she starts slipping, and then his glove comes off, and then she's like falling down. That's a creepy situation to be in. Creepy, it's terrifying, you know. But it was a good movie. That was kind of like his little comeback there. I remember he was bombing things in the 90s, late 80s. You know, just could not make a good movie back then. Plus he got into this overacting thing he was doing. You know, it was like all like, you know, overacting. Some director should have said to him, okay, we need to get back to the way you were acting in Rocky, the original, that style. Lords of Flatbush, that style of acting. This acting you do now is ridiculous, this overacting. And he did it for like 12 years, overacting. You know, like if Frank take him to the side and say, hey, listen, you're ruining your career. You're picking bad stories to make into movies, and your acting is ridiculous. Like Rocky 5. Rocky 5, the acting is asinine. His acting was awful in Rocky 5. And then now it's okay again. You know, it's decent. I'm not saying he's Marlon Brando, but he's not bad. Not bad. I think his best acting, I'll tell you the two scenes, best acting. Rocky 1, the original Rocky, where Mickey goes up the stairs trying to convince Rocky that, you know, he needs a manager and a trainer since he's gotten that big fight now with Apollo. And then that apartment scene, that's good acting, especially the part where he gets all crazy angry when he goes to the bathroom, and then Mickey goes to leave, slams the door, but then remembers he forgot his hat, and he opens the door, goes to grab the hat, and at that moment Rocky, thinking that Mickey left, opens up the bathroom door and sees him there, and then Mickey just leaves, and then Rocky starts yelling. And that to me was great acting. Very few people could pull that off. You know, it's very intense, realistic. That was good acting. And then the other scene that's really good acting is the scene in Rambo First Blood at the end, when Colonel Trotman finds him in the sheriff's station, and he says, hold your fire, and then you know, Stallone goes into that whole thing explaining what's going on in his head, you know, that he's suffering. And that whole scene, that's you know, intense. That's very good acting. So he's capable of doing really good acting, but then at some point he said to himself, I'm going to do this really jumpy, you know, type of acting. If you see Rocky 5, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Just awful. I'm glad he did Rocky Balboa to kind of redeem the franchise a little bit, you know, a lot. Because the Rocky 5, I was so disappointed when I saw that. I mean, it could have been a lot better, but his acting and the acting in that movie did not help. Plus, you get the Morrison guy, who was not that great of an actor either. And that was a Washington guy that was kind of like based on, what was that guy with the hair? Don King. You know, I felt the whole thing was cartoonish. So, but like I said, Stallone's good acting, 2 scenes. I mean, he's done good acting in other places too. I mean, Rocky overall was very good acting. But the scenes that stick out is the one where Mickey shows up at night and he says, you need a manager. And he tells him about the Firpo Dempsey fight. And he was on the undercard. And he says, who do you think got the attention that night? And Rocky says, Dempsey. And he goes, you know why? He goes, yeah, because he was champ. He goes, no. He goes, because he had a manager. Yeah, that's why he got the attention. That's why he got the coverage from the media, because he had a manager. And he goes, I didn't have a manager, so, you know, and then Rocky says to him, the fight's set. I don't need a manager, it's all set. And he goes, I got all this information I want to give you. He goes, well, I got information too. After that whole venting that Rocky does, gets it out of his system, because a lot of times that's all it is. You got to get it out of your system. Then he runs down the stairs, and Mickey's halfway home. You know, he finds him at the end there of the street. There's a good acting on that thing too. If you notice, Mickey turns around as if he's ready to get clobbered. Like he's like got this frightened motion that he does, thinking maybe Rocky's gonna bash him one. But he doesn't. He hugs him, and Mickey, you know, hugs him, and he, you know, probably saying to him, "Okay, we're gonna do some training together. We'll play some of that music that Bill Conti put together." So that, and like I said, the First Blood, last scene in the movie, great acting. Well, not the last scene, because the last scene is when he's walking down the stairs from the police department, and Dan Hill is singing "It's a Long Road." There's another artist I'm a fan of, Dan Hill. I love that song, "It's a Long Road." Very emotional. You could feel the emotion in that. But not only that, that other song, "Sometimes When We Touch," that is a great tune. It's a great tune. That's another one where you feel the heartbreak. You can actually feel the heartbreak in that. You know, I remember hearing that for the first time when I was a kid. And I was like, I can feel that. I can feel the emotion. Even though I'm not going through something like that, at that point I wasn't. I could feel what he's talking about, lyrically and musically. Great Marriage, Dan Hill. And then he had that "It's a Long Road," which I thought was awesome. The way he sang it, perfect. Kind of faded out a little bit now, but he did have a hit album after. I want to say it was like late 80s. Can't we try? Is that the song? Love Is So Much. He did a duet, "Don't Let Our Love Fade Away," no matter what people say. Can't we try? Just a little more passion. I forget the name of the song, but I remember he did have an album. It was a hit, and the reason I remember, I went to Strawberry Records, and there was a guy in there who looked like a hippie from 1969. Like he belonged in Woodstock. He had the big long hair. He had like a beard going. And I went in there and I was trying to explain to him this song, because in those days there was no internet to type in a couple of words of a song. It would give you the whole thing. And I said to him, there's a song, and I said, "Sometimes when we touch, the honesty's too much." And the second I said that, he goes, "All right," he goes, "That's Dan Hill." He goes, "Come over here," you know. He goes, "I don't know if that's in print anymore." He goes, "But," he goes, "let me show you what he's got out now." And I go, "That's him?" He goes, "Yeah, that's him." He goes, I say, "I'm gonna get that." So I bought that album, and then I searched, and I remember I was in one of those the places where they have the rare album things, and I was flipping, I saw Dan Hill, and I grabbed it, and "Sometimes When We Touch" was on there. That's one of my favorite songs. I love that tune, and a lot of times on the radio you will get the abbreviated version of that song, that they've edited some portion of it out, so it's a shorter version, but you want to hear the whole thing. It's a very emotional tune. And then he builds. I had read a story one time. I guess he was in Canada, and he had gotten home, or he was home, and his son was there, and he had some gang member friends over, and Dan Hill said he was frightened out of his mind, didn't know what was going to happen. But yeah, I've seen a video of him on YouTube in recent times. A little bit older. Everybody's a little bit older. And he did that song. It's like on keyboards, just him and keyboards, and I think it was in like a restaurant or something. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Dan Hill. Dan Hill. Marty Balin from Jefferson Airplane, and that song Hearts, that's another one that grabs me. I could feel the emotion dripping from that song. Hearts can break and never mend together. Hearts can be that way. What an awesome song. And then the keyboards on that, it's just brilliant, you know. Just starts off and it builds up. Then the voice, the vocals fit perfectly on that song. I think he died recently. Big fan of his. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.